Have you ever seen your kids obviously agitated, frustrated, and you ask them what's going on, how they're feeling, and they say, I don't know? Obviously, you know. But in reflection, there's moments where you don't know what you feel. There is so much going on in your mind and your body that you can't even possibly name your own feeling. Well, today I have a tip both for you and for your family for these moments. Hey friend, do the daily demands of family life leave you exhausted with no time for yourself? Ready to make self-care and healthy boundaries a natural part of your day, all while embracing your roles as a wife and mom? Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Christina, married 16 years to a neurodiverse man, mom of 3 neurodiverse kids, and many more roles. Welcome to the Moms in Neurodiverse Families podcast. Get ready to begin your self-care journey. Grab your Santé latte and listen in as we take a small step towards a healthier you. I distinctly remember when one of my kids was in first grade and going all the way to third grade. It took me 2 to 2.5 years working with them to identify their feelings because I knew from in my heart, my mama's heart, and also later on confirmed in talking to other wise individuals and trained individuals, is that when a person is able to understand what they're feeling, they can then make a choice of what action they should take. But if they are not even aware of what they're feeling, then that is a big problem. There's actually a diagnosis called alexithymia, which refers to people oftentimes with autism, neurodiversity, where they are not able to identify what they're feeling, or let me clarify, it is a struggle and difficulty. It is possible. However, as with anything else, we need to take time and work with it. So being aware of this alexithymia and that the question of, how are you feeling or how are you doing can be very difficult for kids with autism, neurodiversity, sensory processing. I made it my mission in their younger years to help them identify their emotions. And it was messy and I made mistakes, but this is a basic concept that I worked with. Was I had 2 different charts. The first one was a general feelings chart, which evolved over time, but there was a general chart that showed the facial depictions and then a word with it. And the second chart I had was the anger iceberg. So the first one, the feelings chart, I would demonstrate first off by saying I feel happy right now, and I would point to the chart and say and show that emotion, and then I would begin just showing how my feelings were on that chart, and then I would ask the kids well, how are you feeling? And for many times there was I don't know, and then there would be a meltdown because they were so fresh, okay, that's fine. And so I continued doing this modeling of expressing how I was feeling and showing on the chart. And then I would give them an opportunity. And then I began noticing that there were 2 emotions that they were able to first identify. And this might not be the case for everyone, but the 2 that were the easiest for them was a positive emotion, happiness. Everything was happy, where there's many more terms we can use in that realm, but happy was was the main one. And the other one was anger or sad, depending on the child, but there was those 2 those are the 2 first ones that came out of the gate when they began identifying. And that was humongous. I remember being so excited when one of my children couldn't even say the word, was just quickly pointed at the chart. And I was so proud of them. It was so hard for them to do, and I didn't make them say it. I was fine with them pointing at it, or even me, I could move my finger and just say give me a nod when my finger's on the emotion on the chart that you are feeling right now. There are so many different ways we can do it, so their brain is not going into shutdown mode. And once I got to the point of them being able to acknowledge I'm feeling a positive emotion or a negative emotion, I slowly began working on the anger iceberg for the negative emotions. And so anger is something they're not always aware of when they're angry. You and I can see that our child or maybe our spouse is very upset or angry, but they sometimes are not even aware that they are. And this may seem really odd, but they're not, because they have not completely incorporated the connections for their mind into their emotions isn't quite as strong as it is maybe for you and I. So when they felt angry, I'd bring out the anger iceberg chart and say, okay, anger is, yes, on top here, but below the line, below the waterline, there's all these other emotions, and I would talk about them. Which one do you think it is? And slowly they began saying, oh, I feel sad. Oh, I feel lonely. And once we were able to then take that one big emotion of anger and break it down to smaller ones, that was epiphany. Because if they were feeling sad, well, that's a one type of conversation. If they were feeling like they were betrayed, then that's a whole different type of response that we have. Does that make sense? And we did, originally, there were some people who were working with us to try to do the different zones of regulations. The blue, which is sick or tired, green, which is like calm or resting, yellow is excited or a little anxious, and red is angry or like super, super excited. And that didn't work for my kids. Down the road it did, way down the road, but I had to start just for them to understand at that moment where they were at and where their feelings were. They couldn't make that connection. Again, the feelings chart and then the anger iceberg, those two were very pivotal. And this was an ongoing process that I didn't do every single day because that'd be too intense. But I did a couple times a week, very naturally. I really tried to make it as a part of a natural life. I had it laminated because they would throw it and try to rip it. And I'd have it on the fridge. Now, with one of my children, the feelings chart kind of worked, but she actually needed another step. And that was like a communications chart. And I will also have a link in the show notes for this. Okay, this communications chart had different boxes. If I remember correctly, one was I need, or they were able to actually communicate bigger concepts of problems, or I feel scared. Basically, not just not like saying what your feelings were. It was more so saying I'm hungry, I need water. Because there were moments when the ability to verbally process just was gone. And we had that laminated as well. And that was helpful for that child. They were able to use that communications chart to say their feelings then as well. Like, I feel scared. For them, the feelings chart didn't quite work as well, but the communications chart did, because they were able to say, I'm tired and I'm hungry. They were able to point it out. And the one thing, now this is a little controversial. Some people within the neurodiversity autism range will say any sound, any communication is acceptable. And I think that definitely has a place when it comes to littles. But in our family, there was a point where we said whining was not an acceptable communication method. And again, if you are not in that place, I respect it, I understand. When I knew that they were able to be verbal, now in the situation they were in at that moment, they weren't able to be verbal though, because they were so overwhelmed. That was fine, completely fine. However, whining was not, we didn't want to encourage whining. Instead, it was like, hey, listen, you can choose not to talk because it's too overwhelming for you and your brain is not able to operate those words at this moment, but then you need to use the chart. I think it's definitely looking at your child's levels, and I would never say at this age they shouldn't be doing whining, because I'm not aware of your child's challenges. But there was a point where I knew that they could communicate with some basic words, and then at that point, when they were communicating on an ongoing basis, and then they did become overwhelmed and they weren't able to use their words, that is when I said, okay, listen, I understand you feel big emotions right now, but we are not going to use whining as a way to communicate that. Instead, let's go look at the chart. And it took about 3-4 months to get through that, and being patient and just helping them see like, nope, I can't help you. I don't know what that means. But this chart tells me what you need. And then they learn like, wait, if I really want to be helped, I'm going to use the chart. It did take time, I won't lie, but the benefit was they were able, this is what I think is so important and is so passionate on. Our children need to know how to advocate for themselves. So maybe you're in the camp of like, I will accept any communication, even whining, that's fine. But this is what my goal was, and please hear my heart. They need to be able to advocate for their needs, they need to be able to advocate for what challenges they're experiencing with us first and then out in the real world. If they do not learn how to do that, there will be so many problems for them in the future. So this is why I was so big on this communications charts and anger icebergs, is that they need to know how they're feeling first so they can express to others in a acceptable way for that community, because throwing things, hurting people is not an acceptable way in a community setting. And I'm talking like family as a community setting, in a school, any type of community setting. That is not an acceptable way to communicate. I think we all can agree with that. Kids need to learn that. Like, you may feel big emotions, but it is not okay for you to act big emotions out on people or on property. And that is a process for kids, because especially if their emotional regulation is very low. Now, for adults, these feeling charts, these are great, but many adults might be like, I don't know about that. Well, there is something from Thrive Today, which I have mentioned in the past. They have this emotions wheel, and it's phenomenal. What they do is they have listed what your body sensations are. Like, what are you feeling inside your body? What are some less intense or mild emotion words that you could be used to describe it? And then what are more intense emotion words to describe that feeling? And I will have a link in the show notes for you to access their emotional wheels chart. I believe there's a sign up you might have to go through first. But this is so pivotal, because I'll read a little example here from the Thrive Today Emotionals Wheel. If you are experiencing, you're clenched, you're burning, you're hot, you have a tight jaw, your heart's racing, you would see that and you'd see, oh, that's under anger. And that is great if you are not sure what you're feeling, but you can look at some of the body sensations. You can look at some of the words that are describing the emotions and see which ones does it fit for me. And they even have this statement by anger: I must protect myself and make it stop. So I love the connections that they have here about what's happening inside. And this is where I think this can work for adults who are neurodiverse, because they may not be aware of something's happening in their body. And you may have to be a mirror for the adults in your life, for your spouse or your teen children, is sometimes like, well, right now I'm seeing you're pacing. I'm seeing your hands are clenched, your jaw is clenched, and your eyebrows are also downward. All of that's communicating that there is and I'm very generic when I say this, by the way, I say there is something that is going on, something that's frustrating or concerning. And then the person might go, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I'm really frustrated about that last conversation I had on the phone with so-and-so. We can be a mirror for them, and using this chart as well as let's look at this for a second. Like, where do you think you fit in here? What is your body saying to you? So I think using this Thrive Today's Emotions Wheel is very helpful for yourself, because if you don't know how you're feeling, if you are not aware that you are having anger, if you're not aware that you're feeling disgust, then what do you do with that? It bottles up. Either you explode, or you stuff it and you later explode, or you become bitter. But by identifying the emotion, you can begin taking positive steps. Now, I will say with this Thrive Emotions, the goal they're showing is how you return back to joy, but they have mainly like the more intense emotions listed here. They don't have like the positive listed like the other feelings charts do, but I still think it's a very powerful tool to help you understand, what am I feeling right now? And you may be multiple things, especially when you're dealing with challenges with your children and with your spouse, and you yourself or maybe are not doing what you want to, how you want to be living your life. This emotional chart can help you really break down, like, what am I feeling? I'm feeling so many different things. And then piece by piece, once you identify it, it's like, okay, well, what is the truth of the situation? What can I do to help myself process the emotions and then let them go? And are there other actions I have to take, realizing that I feel these emotions? Maybe there's some conversations that need to be had. Maybe there is some more being in a support group. This can really lead to some positive action of knowing next steps. But unless you know what you're feeling, you can't take those steps. So again, real quick recap is for kids, there is the feelings chart and the anger iceberg, both which are very helpful just for them to be picking out like what's going on inside my body. And then there's a communication chart for more of a higher level expressing their needs. For adults, we can definitely use the feelings chart, and I have done that myself, where it's like, oh yeah, this is how I feel. And then there is the Thrive Today emotions wheel. I hope these give you some ideas of how you can begin processing your thoughts and emotions and helping your kids as well, because when we can get it what's hidden and bring it outward, and if we can process it, then all of a sudden we can start taking steps working together as a family. Hey, thank you for joining me today. I pray this episode gave you encouragement to take one small step. If so, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help other women find this show. By the way, if you're loving this conversation and want more encouragement like this, join my email list at bit.ly/myselfcare. That is bit.ly/myselfcare. I have a planner launching soon that will help you put all this into action in your own life. I look forward to chatting with you again next week for another episode.